Hey, it's Matt here, a very congested Matt. I have a cold. There's been one going around Tokyo. All of my friends seem to have caught it, and now it's my turn to suffer the fever and congestion and all of that. I'm trapped inside, but I always love talking to you, my fellow seekers of everything that's cool about Japanese pop culture. And so I wanted to take this rare moment of being stuck inside to talk about something that's been in the headlines recently. And that is Hello Kitty. November marks her 50th birthday, officially, according to the lore of Sanrio, the company who invented Hello Kitty and sells all of the Hello Kitty products. I say officially because in reality, the first Hello Kitty product didn't come out until March of 1975. That was actually this purse. It's called the Petite Purse, and this is a replica. The real one is vanishingly rare. There's only one known to exist, and it's in a vault at Sanrio headquarters. It's only displayed on very special occasions, kind of like the crown jewel of the kawaii, super cute kingdom. You can tell the difference between the original one and this 2020 replica because the original one doesn't have Hello Kitty written on it. It just has the word hello. Because back in 1975, when this first went on sale, nobody had any idea Hello Kitty was going to be a superstar character. She was just one of many that Sanrio was selling at the time. So I want to use this opportunity to talk about what I like to think of as Sanrio's secrets. And this isn't some kind of conspiracy theory kind of thing. It's only natural that when companies whose lifeblood depends on characters want to control the narrative of those characters and of their own history. Sanrio has decades of history. Its characters have decades of history. And a lot of lore and official storylines have built up around them. But when I was writing my book, Pure Invention, How Japan Made the Modern World, I did a deep dive on all of the stories surrounding Sanrio, its founder, Shintaro Tsuji, and Hello Kitty, to see how they differed from the things that you see or reported on in the headlines. And I found some really, really interesting stuff. The first one is that Shintaro Tsuji, the genius CEO and founder of Sanrio, began his career in a way that the company probably doesn't want people talking about very much. He was a bootlegger of booze for the Japanese black markets in the years immediately after World War II. Let me explain. Shintaro Tsuji is known as the captain of kawaii today for founding Sanrio, but he began his career he studied in university as a chemist. He's actually a trained chemist, and he worked as a chemist for a few years during World War II. When the war ended, he lost that job like everybody else did, and he was thrown out into the world like everybody else was. A world that was pretty devastated by the American bombing campaigns to take the Japanese islands. Now, when you hear words like bootlegging and black markets, you're probably thinking of things like Yakuza and gangsters and organized crime, and I'm sure they were involved in those places. But you gotta understand, there was nothing. There were no stores, people were dependent on rations, there wasn't enough food to go around, so average people in those immediate years after World War II often used black markets to get things they needed, like sugar, for instance, or salt, or basic foods, rice, staples. They would trade, they would buy, they would do whatever they could to get by. And actually, there's a pretty good portrayal of these black markets in the recent movie Godzilla Minus One, which is set in 1946, right around this time period. Shintaro Tsuji was a born and bred entrepreneur. That's why he was so successful with Sanrio many, many years later. But in those dark, dark years after World War II, he had an idea for products that would sell equally as well in that devastated timeline, namely alcohol for drinking and saccharin, the synthetic sweetener. Combined together, you could make a pretty nifty cocktail out of these things. And Tsuji made a fortune on the black market selling his synthesized booze. Kind of like a kawaii Breaking Bad. But, he wasn't really cut out for the black market life, and as the Japanese economy improved, he started a company that specialized in selling silks and all sorts of imported products, and then he hit on the idea of starting to license characters. And that's what gave him the idea to launch Sanrio. So, one of Sanrio's secrets is that they were founded by a gentleman, a really awesome gentleman, I should say. I'm not saying this in any way. I actually think this is great. By somebody who was at one point a bootlegger of alcohol. It just seems so at odds to me with this like super cute, character design that they're so well known for today. But it just also goes to show you the resilience of the human spirit. So, in the late 1960s, Tsuji realized that character licensing was going to be a way to make a lot of money in the years to come. He knew from experience that by putting fun designs and cute characters on all sorts of average products, he could make hits and make a lot of money. But he didn't like having to license from other people. He did. In fact, Sanrio was the first person to bring Peanuts, Snoopy merchandise to Japan. They still actually retain the rights to Snoopy and Peanuts today. I'm sure they're making a fortune off of it. But Snoopy was one of the first imported characters to come to Japan and be put on all sorts of merchandise by Sanrio and make a lot of money for them. But Tsuji knew that every boom has a bust, and he couldn't rely on Snoopy forever. And more to the point, he didn't want to have to keep paying other people to license their designs. So he started hiring young women straight out of art school and ordering them to design all sorts of cute characters that they could experiment with on the marketplace. Prior to Hello Kitty, Sanrio had a huge hit with a pair of characters called Patty and Jimmy. They look like little kids. They're supposed to be from Kansas City. They never say which one. Because there's one in Missouri and there's one in Kansas. But if you time slipped back to the 1970s and asked somebody about Sanrio, they wouldn't talk to you about Hello Kitty. They'd talk about Patty and Jimmy. They just dominated back then. But Patty and Jimmy had their day, and then a new character came along, and that was Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty was created by a young woman named Yuko Shimizu, who actually retired from Sanrio just 2 years after creating this. So she didn't really get to share in any of the booming years for Hello Kitty that followed. This was normal at the time in Japan. It's actually one of the really bad aspects of working in Japan if you're a woman. You were expected in the 70s, it was almost mandatory to quit when you got married because they thought you'd be spending so much time raising your kids. There wasn't a lot of stuff like maternity leave or being like a career mother. So even somebody who made a design as iconic as this was basically pressured into leaving by society at large, if not Sanrio specifically, very shortly after making this. So Hello Kitty passed through a series of designers who kind of managed her over the years. The most famous of them, and the one who is currently managing her today, is known as Yuko Yamaguchi. And Yamaguchi took over Hello Kitty in the 1980s. And this is going to lead to a second one of Sanrio's secrets, a very interesting one. Yamaguchi realized that as Hello Kitty was already designed, her main role was to act as a kind of manager, almost like the manager of a pop star. And so she went out into the field and interacted with fans, kind of like giving signatures, like autograph sessions, being Hello Kitty's sort of oracle or her face to the outside world. Sanrio had a whole bunch of gift shops. They were called gift gates. They still have gift shops today, but back in time, these gift gates were at kind of the cutting edge of Japanese cute character culture. And at first, they were patronized mainly by little girls, elementary school girls. That's who Hello Kitty was originally made for. Kids in elementary, maybe junior high school. When they grew up, they were expected to outgrow all of this stuff. But Yamaguchi, as the years went on, started to notice that the customers who were coming in to get Hello Kitty autographs and talk to her about Hello Kitty products at these Giftgate signing sessions were getting older and older and older. Eventually, it was high school girls coming in there by the early 90s. Now, this really kind of blew Yamaguchi's mind because even though she worked at Sanrio, and Sanrio is a company that specializes in making all of the super cute stuff, they assumed it was mainly for kids too. But Yamaguchi was witnessing the very beginning of a big shift in pop culture and youth culture, and even in the definitions of youth and adulthood. People weren't giving up the things that they liked as kids. They were continuing to enjoy them into adulthood. This was true for boys, and girls who liked, for instance, manga and anime. They would, in Japan, continue to read and enjoy them as adults. They were often disparaged using a word called otaku back then, which is a really bad word in Japanese at the time. And it was true for fans of Hello Kitty. The idea that high school kids would be into Hello Kitty was something very new. And so Yamaguchi watched very closely at the changing trends that were going on. This also overlapped with a period where Japan's economic bubble of the 80s burst, and young people were experiencing a great sense of unease about the future. And all sorts of weird social phenomena started rearing their heads. There were issues with kids misbehaving at school. There were issues with kids not going to school at all. There were issues of a lot of friction between the generations. And then there was an issue called compensated dating. Compensated dating was a euphemistic term for teenaged girls who would get into relationships with older guys, exchanging money. Sometimes it was for just having a meal together, singing karaoke. Sometimes it went a little bit more. But it was a huge socially scandalous thing. It was in all the headlines and all the newspapers. It was a big problem in Japan of the era. One day at one of these signings, Yuko Yamaguchi saw several girls come in who were dressed in really skimpy outfits, and she suspected that they were engaging in this compensated dating. So she actually asked them once they came up to the table, "Are you doing this?" And they said yes. And she asked them, "Why? Why are you selling yourselves like this?" And they said, "Because we want designer stuff, but we can't afford it any other way." And Yamaguchi said back to them, "Okay, I tell you what, you obviously like Kitty and you like Sanrio's stuff. What if I start making products for you that look really fashionable and they're a lot cheaper too? So you don't have to do this. You don't have to go out and sell yourself to get these high-end designer products. You can have designer products that are made just for you." And the girls seemed to agree to that. So Yuko Yamaguchi went and she started creating Sanrio Hello Kitty products for adults. No longer were they in these primary colors like this. No longer were they small for child hands. They were actually patterned on things that you would see in designer boutiques. More quilted sort of stuff, more muted colors, more fashionable. And it kicked off a craze for Hello Kitty stuff among older teens and even young adult women in Japan. It almost flipped the demographic for kawaii stuff from kids to adults overnight. Now in the West, today, it's not really seen as weird for a grown woman to be carrying around a Hello Kitty thing or a, cute character of any kind. It's understood that you can be an adult and still have a playful side. But this was scandalous back in the day. And in fact, there's American magazine articles talking about the infantilization of Japanese women, like this is some kind of bad thing. But it wasn't. It was actually very transformative. It was profoundly transformative for Japanese society. And those young women who were kind of emboldened by getting in touch with their inner children became trendsetters in Japan of the 1990s. It was actually women who became the pioneers of all sorts of early adoption of technology. They turned pocket pagers, those like things that would buzz on your hip if you got a phone call in. You probably don't remember this if you're under about the age of 50, but this was a big thing in the 90s. They transformed pocket pagers into texting devices. They were the first to adopt emoji, which are very kawaii cute characters. They were huge enthusiastic adopters of flip phones and then smartphones when they came around. They were also big fans of networking, using any kind of technologies they could. There was a device in Japan of the era called the print club machine. It was originally intended for salarymen to be able to take a little picture of themselves and stick it on a business card. Young women took that and started making Facebooks out of all of their friends. So in a very real way, you can say that Japanese women invented the rudimentary aspects of social media on the streets of Japan a decade before Silicon Valley tech bros did. It's a really interesting thing. Hello Kitty is deeply connected to that. Getting in touch with your inner child is very connected to that. And it all came from this conversation that Yamaguchi had with these two girls who were engaged in some kind of sugar daddy, sugar baby relationship in the early to mid 1990s. That story, incidentally, comes from Yamaguchi's own autobiography. It's called Tears of Kitty. Unfortunately, it's only in Japanese, but I quote sections of it in my book, Pure Invention, if you're interested. And all of the stuff I'm talking about here is all footnoted in Pure Invention. So if you want to know more, or you want to know where I'm pulling this out of, you can go consult the index there and see it. Anyway, that's it for this time. My throat's starting to get a little tired from this cold, but there you have it. Hello Kitty, megastar with some skeletons in her closet, I guess you can say, but cool ones. I love Hello Kitty and I love Sanrio, so none of this is meant to disparage them as a company. I think actually stories like this make people like Shintaro Tsuji and Yuko Shimizu, who invented Hello Kitty, and Yuko Yamaguchi, and all of this stuff much, much more compelling and much, much more interesting. I hope that they choose to talk about them more openly in the years to come. Anyway, that's it for this time. Like I said, love talking to you guys, gals, everyone. Any questions, hit me down below, and I will see you next time.